Tennessee football hit the practice field for the first time, getting ready for the upcoming season. How did they look? What's the mindset of this Tennessee team? I was there. I'll tell you right here on a Tuesday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols, your Tuesday show, and I'm your host, Eric Kane. So glad to have you guys along for the ride here at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols on YouTube. Please subscribe, rate, review, follow, thumbs up, heart, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever it is. Thank you so much. If you guys watched the show on YouTube yesterday, I want to apologize. You guys know my love. Actually, there's no love. It's all hate relationship with the platform I use to record this Restream. Don't know if you ever heard it. It was absolute crappy quality, and it's a piece of crap. It's a piece of crap product. So the low quality video quality yesterday for half the show, I do apologize. I have no way of knowing whenever I download what the quality is going to look like. It says high definition. So, we will see if today's any better. So anybody familiar with Restream out there, if anybody from Restream is listening, your product sucks. So you guys know me. I'm always going to be quick to call those people out for a product that I pay for. Anyway, got a fun show coming up. Now we got that out of the way. Tennessee football practice for the first time on Monday morning. I was there. What did it look like? Twitter Tuesday coming up. That's in segment number 2. Your mailbag questions. Going to get into those, and we're going to play some clips from Josh Heupel from his Monday press conference as well. We got to hear from Josh Heupel twice already so far in camp. So, plenty to get into. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Tennessee practice number 1 of fall camp Monday morning on the Haslam practice field. Just helmets. They're going to be in helmets for probably another day. Then they'll have shelves on for a day or two, and then they'll get into full pads. There's an acclimation period. You can't just go straight to full pads, but nonetheless, they were out there in helmets today. And the first thing I do, as I always do, is I take roll. I see who is wearing a red non-contact jersey. I see who is working off to the side, and that didn't change on Tuesday. First, 2 players of note that were wearing a red jersey. Defensive back Christian Charles, who we talked about yesterday, practicing and repping the quarterback position. He had a red non-contact jersey on, and so I watched him while we were out there. By the way, we got to be out there for 9 periods yesterday for about 50 minutes. So that's the most practice we'll get to see all season long. Tomorrow, or today rather, and the rest of the week when we get out there, we'll only get to see about 20 to 25 minutes. So it was really, really cool to see all the different stuff that they did for, almost an hour. But Christian Charles, he went through individual. He did a lot of that type of work, but I never saw him do any 11 on 11. So maybe he did and I just missed it, or maybe he did after we left. But saw him do a lot of individual work, but he was getting work in, though, wearing a red non-contact jersey. Running back Jalen Wright, who we mentioned on yesterday's show, was a bit banged up. He's going to be a bit limited coming into this fall camp. He was wearing a red non-contact jersey, but he was off to the side, working with trainers and doing stuff on the side. So that running back room, again, I still expect Lynn J. Dixon to be a part of this group at some point this week. He was on campus visiting on Sunday, but that running back room right now is extremely thin. I mean, there were points in times where, with Jalen Wright working off to the side, there was only 3 scholarship running backs, and 2 of those guys were true freshmen, working in the running back drills on Monday. And so, again, that continues to be a point of concern here early on in camp. But those were some guys off working to the side. Overall, it was day 1. Again, they were not in pads. So everything I'm saying right now, please take with a grain of salt. But I look to see who's repping with what groups, and something we're kind of talking about is who's playing where, especially in the defensive secondary. But we'll go ahead and run down through what I saw. The first group on the offensive line, as you'd expect, returns 4 of the 5 offensive linemen. Left to right was J.J. Crawford, who's in a competition with Gerald Mincy and Dane Davis for the starting left tackle position. Really, it's just Gerald Mincy, the Florida transfer. He was up first on Monday at left tackle, followed by the starters, Jerome Carvin at left guard, Cooper Mays at center, Javonte Spraggins at right guard, and Darnell Wright at right tackle. Now, the second group had Gerald Mincy there at left tackle, and then left to right down the offensive line, Savion Herring, Addison Nichols, Ollie Lane, and Dane Davis. And then Jackson Lampley, Parker Ball, they were rotating in with those second teams as well. And Mincy and Crawford, even though it's day 1, even though there were no pads on, they were still kind of splitting those first team left tackle snaps all day long that I saw. At quarterback, it was the trio of Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton, and Taven Jackson in that order. Running backs, of course, it was Jabari Small. And then the two freshmen that were getting reps today, Justin Williams Thomas, and then Dylan Sampson. Tight ends were your two veteran seniors, Jacob Warren and Princeton Fant, followed by Miles Campbell, and then a couple of walk-ons that will probably get a little bit of run this year because they're pretty quality walk-ons there, especially if you play more tight ends, in certain formations, like I think what Tennessee wants to do at some point in times this year. You go to receiver, the first three up: Cedric Tillman, Ramel Keaton, and Jalen Hyatt. No shock there. Brew McCoy was repping with the third team today, but it's the first day of practice. He's missed a whole lot of time, so that's, he's still not eligible, but he'll still get a whole lot of rep and still work in camp. Just because he was repping with third team today does not an indictment on him whatsoever. That's how football works. You're new to the team, you start off in the back, and then they'll move you up. But it was Ramel Keaton on the outside, Cedric Tillman on the outside, and Jalen Hyatt in the slot. The next three: Jimmy Holiday on the outside, Walker Merrill, which can play slot as well. He's been repping on the outside. And then you had Jimmy Callaway. And then the third team had Brew McCoy and some other freshmen like Caleb Webb, Squirrel White, Chaz Nimrod, some players like that. Those were kind of what the receivers look like today. Defensive front, going left to right on the defensive line: Byron Young, Amari Thomas, Bryson Eason, Tyler Barron were up first in the first group. Roman Harrison, DJ Terry, Kerrod Garland, Latrell Bumpus were up with the second group. Elijah Simmons rotated in with those groups. Freshman Tyree West, Jordan Phillips, Jason Jenkins, James Pierce, and Joshua Josephs were all in the latter two groups, and second in the threes and fours, just kind of getting a taste of it again. Day one of practice for those freshmen, especially those who weren't here during spring. Here's in the secondary. This is what I saw in the secondary. Okay, so who is where, who is practicing where. It's day one. It can very easily change. So this is not the gospel. That's kind of been my phrase all week long. The veteran safety duo of Jalen McCullough and Trayvon Flowers were up first. Then the second team, if you want to call it that, safeties were Danico Slaughter and Ohio State transfer Andre Turrentine. At cornerback, again, Christian Charles was limited yesterday from what we saw. It was Warren Burrell and Brandon Turnage at cornerback for the first group. Kamal Hamm was rotating in with those guys. And then, behind those guys were Deshaun Rucker, D. Williams, Christian Harrison. At star, it was Tamari McDonald, who again was the guy playing star all spring practice because they didn't have anybody else. And then it was Georgia Tech transfer Wesley Walker. We'll hear more in segment number 3 on these two defensive back transfers from Ohio State and Georgia Tech, and Andre Turrentine and Wesley Walker. But I do think that they're going to help Tennessee's team sooner rather than later. I truly do believe that. They both look really good from a physical standpoint. They passed the eye test, with flying colors. Christian Harrison did pretty well, true freshman. He was holding his own against Jalen Hyatt in a couple of drills. Tyree West, though, there were no pads on. That's why, again, it's so hard to take anything away from day one because you had helmets on, nothing else. But in 11-on-11 work, Tyree West had a pretty good day. But again, no pads are on there, right? A note on Brew McCoy, and I said this in my practice observations at VolQuest.com, and I think a lot of people kind of took it and ran with it. I mean, listen, it's day one. The dude had surgery. The dude has been hurt. He has not been working out with, on the regiment like everybody else has all off season long. So I thought he looked a little out of football shape. I mean, he's fat. Doesn't mean that he's not in shape, but there's a difference in being in shape and then being in football shape, and it hits everybody in the face, game one and day of camp one. But I thought it hit him a little bit harder just from my observations because, again, he's been banged up a little bit, but that's, no worries. I think he'll work through that. A lot of people took that and ran on the, on my piece on Monday morning, but that's not necessarily what I meant by that. Squirrel White was really impressive. One-on-ones, some veteran safeties couldn't, jam him on the line. He blew past a couple of those guys for touchdowns. I don't know if he's going to play, and we'll hear more on, Squirrel White from Josh Heupel in segment 3. I don't know if he'll have a role in this team, but I expect him to see some. I don't know how many snaps he'll play, I guess, but I expect him to have some type of minor role for sure on this team. So nonetheless, I mean, it was a pretty good day one. It was a lot of roll call trying to see who was where and all that type of stuff, but looks like a different mindset, if you will. This team is so much further along right now than where they were this time last year. They know the expectations of practice. They know the expectations of their position coaches. This is a veteran team. It helps on offense too when you return an all SEC wide receiver and, potentially an all SEC quarterback, 4 of your 5 offensive linemen. two veteran tight ends. I mean, a veteran running back. I mean, you've got a lot of vets on that offense and defense as well with Tyler Barron and Byron Young and Jeremy Banks in the middle and your two safeties. So looked like a little bit of a different mindset. At least this team looked more comfortable. They were flying around, taking coaching in stride, all that type of stuff. All the cliches you want to throw out there for day number one. But in the end, remember, it's day one. It's day one. There will be different notes tomorrow or, today and then tomorrow and then the next day. So I'll be intrigued to see how some of these players string together a couple of days in a row, because as a coach, that's what you're looking for. You have questions. I might have answers. We'll see when we come back here for the Mailbag Show, Twitter Tuesday. And it's coming up next here on Locked On Vols. But I want to tell you about LinkedIn. You need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. So you can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job with a purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to separate the word that you're hiring so the network can help find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening options and questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and ultimately hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every single week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? 40 million. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We continue on with this episode, a Tuesday episode of Locked On Vols. Welcome back into it, guys. Let me try that again. Vols. I said Vols. Vols. A little East Tennessee twang coming out there. Mailbag time. You guys have questions. I'll do my best to answer anything you guys have every single Tuesday. Twitter Tuesday, the mailbag edition of Locked On Vols. You can get me in your questions via the YouTube channel. My DMs are open. Locked On Vols @_Kaner, all that type of stuff. You can tweet me, whatever gets the message across. If you guys have any questions, every single Tuesday I answer your questions, and you can send them out throughout the week, and I'll try my best to bookmark them and go back and look at them. We'll start on the YouTube channel. Buck wants to know. He says Brandon Turnage got one start last season, but was named SEC Defensive Player of the Week. With that being said, do you think with the secondary being as bad as it was last season, do you think Brandon Turnage makes his way into the starting lineup game one? That's a good question, because I think the starting lineup in the secondary potentially could look different in game 3 or 4 compared to game 1. Now, you have a month of practice. Okay, it's about adapting, learning the schemes, all that type of stuff. Brandon Turnage has been here. He knows all that type of stuff. So it's not necessarily for him, but Andre Turrentine might play a whole lot, but he might not start day one. Christian Charles might play a whole lot, but he might not start day one. Brandon Turnage, he was repping with the first team defensive backs, in Monday's practice. But what happens when the pad comes on? The thing about the secondary, and this goes in with Brandon Turnage as well, you have options. You have so many different options this year to where you need to have some good competition there, like we've been talking about. But last year you didn't have that luxury at all. You just didn't. And so, we'll have to see. Brandon Turnage is interesting because he barely played. When he did, he was SEC Defensive Player of the Week at a position that he wasn't practicing at the star position against Missouri. So I think he's got a lot to give to the team. Getting him healthy was big. He missed the bowl game and missed spring practice. So we will see. Wouldn't shock me at all if Brandon Turnage is in that starting lineup. But I do think that even if he doesn't start the game one, I think you'll get to see a lot more of him in year 2 compared to year 1, where he got in here late and was kind of playing behind the 8 ball. We'll go on now to Nuga. Nuga wants to know if I can find him. Here we go. This is a huge year for Tennessee football. Will Tennessee progress or regress under head coach Josh Heupel? It's really big because of the contract he is under and for stability of the program. I'm on the side of progression with an 8 to 9 win season. Maybe even more. But wow, if we end up being 6-6 or 7-5 again, there will be a lot of questions. Yeah, I think that's the right mindset. Always look to be positive and not negative. Progression instead of regression. I think the over/under for BetOnline.net is at 7.5. As I've said, hammer the over. I think Tennessee can get 8 wins easily, potentially 9 wins in the regular season. My official win-loss prediction for Tennessee is 8-4 regular season. But Tennessee can win, in my opinion. Tennessee can win every game on the schedule outside of Georgia and Alabama. Now, That doesn't mean Tennessee will. That's why I have the record at 8-4, because look at the way the schedule is, lines up, knowing how football works, all that type of stuff. And maybe I'll revisit that before kickoff. But nonetheless, I think Tennessee has a chance to win, every game outside of Georgia and Alabama on that schedule, in my opinion. It's a matter of how many of those can you get? How many of those swing games can you get? Can you go down to LSU and get that win? Can you go up to Purdue or Pittsburgh and get that win? Can you beat Florida at home? Can you beat Florida at home? So we will have to see. But I think everything's pointing towards Tennessee taking a step in year 2. And that's the expectation. Here in year number 2, the expectation is you got to go beat Pittsburgh. You've got to beat Florida, in my opinion. And then in year 3, if all goes well in year 2, the expectation will be, all right, you knocked off one of the big 3. Can you knock off one of the juggernauts in Alabama or Georgia? So cross that bridge when you get there. But nonetheless, I agree with you, Nuga. It is it's a big year for Tennessee football. It's a big year for Josh Heupel. Let's see the progress you can make in year number 2. All right, we're going to go on now with Twitter Tuesday. And actually, I'm pulling up my phone right now. And lucky that he saw this, my guy Matt. Question for the show, if you haven't recorded yet. What is holding up Brew McCoy from being eligible? Someone else asked me this question as well. So I think it was Dewey asked me this as well. So I'll combo Matt and Dewey's response here. End of the day, I mean, without getting into specifics, it's something very easily to get done. Tennessee is confident it's going to get done. Tennessee's administration, Tennessee's coaching staff is confident that it's going to get done. But they've been confident that it's going to get done all summer long, and it's still not been done yet. So everything I've heard is the expectation is he is going to be eligible. We know how these things work. A lot of times it goes all the way up to game week by the time people kind of get to following these types of things. But I'm not going to go into specifics, but it is something easily to be obtained, and I expect it to be obtained. I expect Brew McCoy to be playing football for Tennessee this year. But again, I get it. Until again, as Josh Heupel says, that final hurdle is crossed. I mean, there's some anxiety there. I understand that for sure. All right, now we'll go to the DMs at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols. And we will go to K. Wayne. K. Wayne, always a contributor to Twitter Tuesday. I heard that Tennessee might have lost some momentum with Stanton Ramel and Ricky Gibson. Can you give us an update as to where Tennessee stands as their decision gets closer? I think both of those guys will be coming off the board in the next 2 weeks. All the momentum right now kind of feels like with Stanton Ramel that it's gone to East Lansing, that it's gone to Michigan State. That's just kind of the feel for it. Tennessee still believes it's in a good spot, but we'll have to see. That's recruiting. It changes on the hour, changes daily, right? But the momentum feels like it's kind of shifted to Michigan State in conversations that have been held here recently. Ricky Gibson, we'll have to see. Tennessee is still very much in contention there. He was at Georgia this past weekend. To my understanding, he has not told Georgia that he is going to go there. But as much as Georgia pushes, I mean, that's the team that just won a national championship. So, we'll have to see. But Georgia is very much in the back pocket of Ricky Gibson right now. Tennessee is still in a good spot, but the more and more Georgia pushes, that should create a little worrisome there for the Ricky Gibson sweepstakes. So probably not the best updates you wanted to, but it's recruiting. It could all change tomorrow for sure. We will go to Braden. Braden wants to know, what do you personally think Tennessee's fate would have been last season if Joe Milton never went down against Pittsburgh? Good question. I mean, if he were to have continued at the pace he was on and missing and overthrowing open wide receivers, especially down the field, Tennessee would have benched him. Tennessee would have made a move. Now, if that's game 4, game 5 of the season, it's at game 3. Is that later in the Pittsburgh game? I don't know when that would happen. I just know at the pace through 6 quarters, he was missing some wide open receivers down the middle of the field. And that's not all on him. That's some on the receivers as well. But point blank, the connection was just not there. So everything happens for a reason. Everything happens. Hendon Hooker comes in. He has a year like none other, right? Could he have still had a good year if he came in game 4 or 5? I don't know. But point remains, at the continued pace that he was on, he would have been benched and Hendon Hooker would have came in. Could he have gotten out of his funk? Potentially. But it's college football. You only have a certain amount of games every single year. You're not going to wait around for that to happen. So, nonetheless, I think he would have been benched. I think Hendon Hooker would have played. I just don't know if it would have been in the second quarter of the Pittsburgh game or if it could have been the second quarter of the, I don't know, whatever, couple of games that came after that. We'll move on now to Ross. And Ross wants to know, I don't get too wrapped up in recruiting rankings because potential is only part of it. Player development is the other part of it. Absolutely. Aside from Rodney Garner, how would you rate the other position coaches in terms of player development? And where would you look to upgrade if it was your call? Right now, I wouldn't upgrade anywhere because you had a good season last year. You saw players develop and then you move on. But I mean, it's a year to year type thing. Brian Sean Marie, again, I've mentioned it before. I'll mention it again. What he did with Solon Page, Aaron Beasley, and Jeremy Banks last year, goodness gracious, not a better coaching job in America, I'm telling you. And I know that linebacker unit outside of Banks was really bad, but what he was able to do with those three guys, incredible coaching. So I think, Rodney Gardner's obviously up there. I like what I've seen from Brian John Marie so far. It's hard to argue with what Willie Martinez has done throughout his career. Especially shaping and helping Alontae Taylor become a second-round draft pick. Theo Jackson got a little work there. Of course, that was a lot of Tim Banks as well. Glenn Ellerbee, it's I'm intrigued to see what this year goes like because Darnell Wright was a massive disappointment for 2 years, and comes in Glenn Ellerbee, and now Darnell Wright might be a first-round draft pick after this season. So, got to give credit there. Kelsey Pope was not an on-the-field coach last year, but he was still a part of coaching on the practice field every single day. And look what happened to Cedric Tillman. So I've been impressed with a lot of those guys. We'll see what happens. Tennessee needs to continue to develop at the running back position, needs to continue to develop at the safety position, needs to continue to develop at the at the edge position. Mike Eckler's in there as well. I wouldn't make a move right now. Certainly, I know this is all hypothetical, but ask me again in the off season and, after this season, we might have a different conversation, but been really impressed with Brian John Marie, been really impressed, obviously, with Rodney Garner, and honestly, Glenn Ellerbee with what he did with Darnell Wright last year was pretty impressive. A couple more, we'll move on. Actually, one more. No, two more. I lied. We'll move on. We'll go to Eric. Good name, strong name. Do you think Roman Harrison finally has that breakout season we've been hoping for? I don't know, man. I mean, he played a ton of snaps last year and didn't really do anything. Looks like Tarzan. I won't say he plays like Jane, but he didn't really do anything. So you can only hope, right? From a physical standpoint, he's got everything you want in a Leo and an edge rusher. He's got good hands. He's quick. He's nimble. He's fast. He's strong. He plays hard. His motor's there. It's just a matter of bringing the quarterback down, right? You got to do that. So we'll see. I mean, Roman Harrison is now he's a senior now. So, breakout year. I mean, I know Theo did. I know Cedric did it last year. We'll see. He'll get opportunities, but nothing. I mean, he'll get opportunities simply because he will play snaps. Don't get me wrong, but nothing that I've seen from his past would, give me confidence in saying that I'm expecting that this year. We got to, see what he can do, go out there and earn it. All right, last one. We will go to I got two more. Go Vols. If Lynn J was on campus today, would he automatically be third on the depth chart or no? Automatically, no, but he would probably be right up there, splitting time with Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, and then he might get a little bit leg up on some of these. Justin Williams-Thomas is going to get some run, but maybe third, fourth. He would play. He would play to answer your question. Third string, somewhere around there, third or fourth string for sure. And then last one, we will go to Chelleray, and will Jackson Hanna play meaningful snaps on the defense this fall? Just right now on the onset, I would say probably not. Also, how would you think the D-line transfer Austin Lewis will do this year? Seems like a big guy. Was on scholarship and got some snaps at Liberty. Heard he was injured, and that's why he's left. Right now, I would say that those guys probably aren't in a position to give you a lot of snaps, but you always need more defensive linemen, and Jackson Hanna is a guy that was on scholarship in Nebraska. We'll see what happens. Tennessee needs linebackers to play. Tennessee needs defensive linemen to play. And something I've noticed, Tennessee's gone out and got some former scholarship guys to come and walk on for Tennessee, those two guys included. So that's the type of environment you want in practice for sure. And who knows, injuries can push those guys up the depth chart. Thank you so much for Twitter Tuesday. This mailbag was a success. On the other side, we'll get into Josh Heupel. We'll hear some comments he had from day 2 of camp, practice number 1. That's coming up next here on Locked On Balls. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And I mean that, guys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Are you ready? Delicious cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite cookie dough chunk puffs. Have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it, plus it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and your family. It'll be the perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself, right? All that and more. The new cookie dough chunk puffs and so much more you can find at Built.com. And while you're there, put in the promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. Go order the chunk cookie dough chunk puffs right now and more. That's all at Built.com. All right, boys and girls, we are running a bit behind the sticks here, getting into segment number 3 a little bit late. So I wanted to play a lot of audio. If you're watching on YouTube, you will see the video of this. But nonetheless, if you're just listening, you'll certainly hear the audio. I want to play some clips from Josh Heupel, his press conference after practice on Monday, following practice number 1. A lot of talk about Jalen Hyatt. Josh Heupel addressed the fact that he needed a change in his mindset. He's added size, he's added strength, and he's added confidence. Here's Josh Heupel on the rising junior slot receiver in Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah, even in the middle part of last year, his focus and attention to detail, he understood that it needed to change, and he started making those changes. Dramatically different from the time that we got back in January. We talked earlier about guys that have changed their body. Like, he's added a ton of size and strength, maturity to his frame. I think that's gained a lot of confidence for him in how he plays with a physical presence, and that can be in one-on-one matchups. It can be blocking on the perimeter. It can be the way he presents himself and finishes plays when he has the ball in his hands too. All of those factors, give him the ability to have a big year for us this year.
Tennessee needs Jalen Hyatt to play at his best. Tennessee needs him to reach that potential, and all indications from this offseason is that he is on that way. So we'll have to see how camp goes for Jalen Hyatt. 2 names outside of Jalen Hyatt that are getting a lot of buzz in the camp early on in camp: true freshman Squirrel White and transfer Brew McCoy, as we mentioned both of those names back in segment number 1. Josh Heupel comments on both of these guys. First, he opens up about Squirrel White with a bit of a zinger, and then he gets into talking a little Brew McCoy on how he's big, strong, and he's long on the perimeter. 2 very different types of receivers, but 2 receivers that could play a role for Tennessee this year and in years to come. Here's Josh Heupel on Squirrel White and Brew McCoy.
He's not slow, that's for sure. Squirrel's competitive, really smart, mature in the way that he handles himself in the building, in the meeting room, physically taking care of his body, his ability for the game not to be moving too fast, really almost from day one in the way that he's handled what we do offensively. He needs to have a great camp for us and believe that he will. He's truly fearless. He's not the biggest guy, but he is fearless. He's going to stick his face in any physical situation that he needs to. Brew, big, strong, long, out on the perimeter. He's learned how to play in our offensive system and how to play from the whistle of the previous snap to the snap of the next one. For him, I think he's gained a much better understanding of that throughout the course of the summer. The first couple of weeks of June, so dramatically different than by the time we got to July with him. He's a guy that's played college football, right, and competed at a high level. That maturity is something that is an advantage for him in coming here and transitioning to our football program.
We will shift gears now from wide receivers to the defensive back, the secondary, and the guys that got to cover these guys in practice each and every day. 2 transfers. I mentioned in segment number 1, I think these guys will help Tennessee a lot sooner rather than later. Andre Turrentine from Ohio State, Wesley Walker from Georgia Tech. And Josh Heupel opens up about those 2 guys, what they brought to the room, what they brought to the defense. Starts with Wesley Walker and then talks a little Andre Turrentine as well. Here's Josh Heupel on his 2 defensive backs from the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think both are very coachable. They have a high care factor. They have good football IQ and understanding. Wesley, the amount of time that he's been in college football, he's able to take a scheme that he's ran before and transition it into the verbiage that we have. And that way, I think, not seamless, but it's been a fluid transition for him. Made a big play out there today. Want to see those guys compete in every area. That's special teams. It's on the defensive side of the football. There's a lot of opportunity to earn reps on the defense side of the football. You heard Coach Banks yesterday talk about us having to play more guys to have competition. We need more guys to show that they're going to play at a championship level. But those 2 guys, bring some of the football movement that we wanted, and they have a high care factor.
Again, we're talking options, names, numbers, jerseys, bodies. There's more of those this year in the secondary, and I think that's why the secondary and the defense overall will take a step in year number 2. So I got something above my eyelid here. I just noticed here. Oh, there it is. That was there all. If you're watching on YouTube, it was there all show right there. All right, last clip here. Let's get into it. The leader of the defense, one of the leaders of the defense, the most impactful player of the defense, in my opinion, a tackle machine right there in the middle, Jeremy Banks. Been quite a journey for Jeremy Banks. A lot of there's been some highs lately, but there were a lot of lows, and a lot of those lows came before Josh Heupel and his staff were on campus. But because of accountability, the trust factor between those two, understanding the why, things Josh Heupel mentions here on Jeremy Banks and why he continues to progress and why there's still even more left in the tank. Here's Josh Heupel on Tennessee's middle linebacker, Jeremy Banks.
We talk about accountability. It's one of the core beliefs in any relationship that we have and who we have to be, from coaches to everybody in the building, players included. He's grown a bunch in that. Along with that, I think just the trust of our staff, the process that we're taking him through, him understanding the why of what we're doing. Those are all big factors to creating buy-in with him. And as he continues to grow through this training camp, and he's played a lot of football, but there's still a ton of room of growth for him to maximize his talents and be in the right place at the right time to make the play when it presents himself. Excited to see his development and growth here even during the course of this training camp.
Again, that was Josh Heupel from press conference we'll call it number 2, from day 2 of camp following practice number 1. Monday morning. All right, guys, gals, thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Vols. What a good show. Hopefully the video quality was a whole lot better than it was yesterday. We will find out here in mere moments when I begin editing this episode and getting it out there to you. Of course, all this is happening, last night when you're listening and watching in real time, but love to pull back the curtain a little bit. But thank you guys so much, as always, for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Watching, subscribing, liking, thumbs upping, all that, and commenting all on YouTube. That helps so much. Keep it up. If you're on Apple Podcasts, rate me, 5 stars, give me a positive review. That'd be a big help. And of course, follow and subscribe on wherever you find your podcast. When you're not listening to Locked On Vols, check out Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy. Camp season's here all around the SEC. Find out more about the SEC by checking out Locked On SEC and making that your second listen, right behind Locked On Vols, which is your first listen each and every day. Guys, thanks so much. We'll come back. We'll recap practice number 2 from a Tuesday morning that's coming up on a Wednesday. Locked On Vols.